So a few weeks ago, I was right here at the ICC in Sydney at the AIDH Digital Health Summit. We were exploring digital health advances in hospital and primary and community care, from the front line to the back office in metro, rural and regional New South Wales. So in this episode today, you'll hear the conversations I had with speakers who presented at the AIDH Digital Health Summit. Plus, I got to get out during the networking sessions and speak to attendees to find out what they learned from the sessions and what excites them about the future of digital health. So if you enjoyed this one, you're going to love MedInfo 23, presented by AIDH, happening in Sydney this year, and it's the 19th World Congress of Medical and Health Informatics. So there's going to be lots and lots of digital health leaders and clinicians from around the world attending MedInfo later this year. For more information on that one, check the comments below. But right now, here are the conversations I had with speakers at the AIDH Digital Health Summit in Sydney in 2022. Collaboration starts with the conversation. Team HealthTech, let's make it happen.
This is Talking HealthTech with me, Peter Birch, featuring content and community about technology in healthcare.
It's been a great day. Caught up with some old colleagues, yourself included, and sat in on a couple of the chats as well. So
Nice.
learned about some of the new stuff that's coming out.
Connecting the disconnected ecosystem. It's a mess, right? It's a huge spider web. I think that's the opportunity. It'll provide greater information, more informed patients. It will also streamline and drive productivity for clinicians.
Recent session actually was the closing plenary with the students from Loreto and Normanhurst. That was really inspiring. That was probably one of the most heartwarming moments I've had, seeing young students, year 10 students, being brought in a proper partnership between eHealth and a school association and a school system.
Everyone works so hard in this sector, and sometimes it's not just that we share common passions, but we share common frustrations too, at how hard it can be and how isolating it can feel, even though you're a part of a massive tribe of people.
I'm Dr. Jen Bickle-Findlay, and currently I'm a healthcare consultant, and I am in the educational area around writing health informatics and digital health content for courses.
Got it. And speaking of courses for health informatics, keen to learn a bit more about CHIA. For those that don't know about the Certificate of Health Informatics Australasia, talk to me about it. What is it?
Okay, so CHIA stands for Certified Health Informatician Australasia. It's a credentialing program, so it's not an educational course, it's a credential. And it's to give recognition to people who work in the area of health informatics but haven't got a degree or a master's, but have many, many years of experience and lots of knowledge, and this is a professional recognition of that knowledge and skills that they have.
And what kind of things are covered within the program?
It has 6 domains in our competency framework, so all the program stems from that competency framework. So that's health sciences, information science, information technology, social and behavioural sciences, management and leadership, and then the biggest part of the framework, of course, is core health informatics. That's the bigger part, yes.
And for those that might not be fully aware of health informatics and what it is, maybe how it differs to just technology in healthcare, tell me a bit more about health informatics and why that's a particular focus.
So that's why we have the competency framework, because health informatics covers all those domains. So you have to know about the health side of things, you also have to know about the IT side of things, but you are a conduit between the IT people who build systems and the clinicians who use the systems. So that's why it's important. You have to know health and how health works and what happens to consumers when they go through their health journey. But you also have to have an understanding of the systems and how they are set up and what they do, so that you can explain to clinicians how to use them effectively. And the benefit for the clinicians, you have to keep stressing that all the time, it makes their work a lot more efficient, and they can also extract data, and data turns to information, which turns to knowledge, and it allows them to see the workflow, it allows them to be more proficient in what they're doing. So that's the important link.
And so it sounds like then you don't need to be a clinician and you don't need to be a software developer or anything. It's across that spectrum of healthcare roles and technology one, it's a fit for a lot of different types of people.
Absolutely. We, in the CHIA alumni, we have lots of health information managers. We have doctors, nurses, we have people that have come from an IT background. We have people that have come from project management side background that have been working on technology projects, but merely project managing them. So that's why we always say health informatics, we're a very, very, very broad church because we come from all different walks of life. There are allied health people now, we're getting lots more of those in because they're starting to digitise their work environment. We have pharmacists. They're definitely on the well on the path of digitisation. So yes, we all come from different walks of life, but we all talk the same language around health informatics.
And if someone's considering doing CHIA, they're not sure if it's the right time or should they wait a bit longer, what's the right time to do CHIA?
The right time to do CHIA is when you've got 90 days that you're going to have no interruptions in your life. So you're not moving house, you're not going into another job, you're not being seconded to a higher position where you've got to do a lot of study at night to do your job. You're not going to have a baby. Your child's not going to have surgery. All those things. You have to have a stable 90 days because once you register, the clock starts. So the 90 days starts from the minute that you register. So you need to have allocated time each week to study. Some people, it doesn't take them long to do their area that they're familiar with. So for me, the health domain didn't take me long at all because I've been living health nearly 50 years now. So that area I didn't have to study all that much. But when I got to like IT, that's all foreign to me in terms of the granular knowledge. So I had to spend a lot of time there. So yeah, you've got to have lots of time to put the work into study.
But it's self-paced as well, right? So it's not like you have to attend weekly things.
No, and that's the beauty. It's a credential. So you do the study. Yeah. It's self-paced. So if you want to do 2 weeks in a full on, you can do it, or if you only want to do weekends. But in that 90 days, you have 2 opportunities to sit the exam. It's a multi-choice exam. So we generally recommend people have the first attempt around week 10, because if you are unsuccessful, then you've got 2 weeks to continue to study and have your second attempt. But most people pass on the first attempt. But it's nice to have a contingency plan. Yeah.
And it's not just do the test and then that's it, is it? There's a community of people who've done it. Talk to me about the ongoing nature of CHIA.
Correct. So you now become a CHIA alumni, and Desi, she sends out an alumni newsletter very frequently, and it just has up-to-date information around what's happening in the space. We always have a focus on a new resource or a new report that might be of interest to health informaticians. So we have that. We have activities that are alumni-only activities, and that's been via webinars, of course, due to COVID. And then after you pass that examination, that lasts for 3 years. So because it's a credentialing program, it means you have to recertify, because you don't just learn it and then that's it, it never changes. And particularly in health informatics, it's just so dynamic, it changes all the time. So every 3 years you have to submit your journal through CPD points, and you get recertified for another 3 years. So you continually do that for the rest of your life. Every 3 years, you submit your CPD journal.
Got it. I'm on it already for mine. And so For those that want to learn more about becoming a chair, what should they do?
They should contact the Australasian Institute of Digital Health. Desi is the program manager for CHIA, but you just need to send an email to certification@digitalhealth.org.au. The other good source is the website of AIDH, and if you just go to careers, and then in there it has CHIA, and it has its own portal in the website, and it answers absolutely everything that you would want to know about CHIA.
I'll introduce myself in Yalanji. Nyayu Kuka Yalanji Bama. Nyayu Kodba Wawa Kadbel. My name's Luke Briscoe. My Yalanji name's all about embracing my country and culture. And I'm a digital, I suppose, creative. I've started a company called IndigiLab about almost 10 years ago now.
And so you were one of the first sessions in the plenary today, and I saw you speak up on the stage. Talk to me about what you were sharing with the group here at the summit today.
What I was talking about in the summit was looking at some of the key barriers facing Indigenous peoples in the I suppose data inclusion uptake, and trying to get more of our youth involved in going to medical services and getting assessments. And what we found, not only in Australia but overseas, is that a lot of our youth are actually more comfortable with dealing with avatars and games to actually get their health and well-being assessments, and that's alarming, because that says that there's still racism in the media, in the medical service, and it's systemic, and it's still a barrier for Indigenous peoples just simply going into a medical service and getting checked up.
And I heard you mention in the session today, you talked about this convergence of equity of technology and equity in healthcare. Talk to me a bit more about how technology and healthcare play together and how that ties in with equity.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say COVID really triggered a lot of these important policy discussions around health equity. But what we found with the Indigenous communities that were living in some of the urban areas is that the lack of access to technology, or even just basic Wi-Fi, couldn't allow for communities to ring up family back home to where they're from. So it really caused a disconnection to the country and culture. So that's something that really has sparked my investigative interest to understand more about the emergence of tech equity and health equity, and how the two need to be, I suppose, like in terms of a policy aspect, thought about.
And there'd be many attending today at the event, but also checking out the content afterwards, who might be creating technology in the healthcare space. What advice would you give to those that are making technology solutions to ensure they're being inclusive and making sure it is accessible particularly to Indigenous communities?
Yeah, definitely. So when we look at the, I suppose, the Indigenous estate, when we're thinking about health and well-being and projects that might impact community, I think it's important to understand that Indigenous peoples really have a rights-based approach when we think about tech and health equity. So it's important to use mechanisms like the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and then some services might have RAP plans, so making sure that they have reconciliation action plans in place, and really trying to make sure that the community are engaged in all aspects, and even the projects that I developed as an Indigenous cultural practitioner, I still go into communities and develop what's called as Indigenous cultural indicators. So trying to understand better from community perspectives what their needs are, what their wants are, to ensure that there's reciprocity.
What do you find are the biggest needs in Indigenous communities when it comes to healthcare, but particularly technology in healthcare?
Firstly, I would say that, definitely our communities are very broad. You have the city area where a lot of our community people might live. Then you have remote areas. So they have very different needs. And I think that's important for policymakers and people working in startups to think about as well, because it's really hard to go back once you've actually developed something that is, I suppose, like just targeting one group rather than looking at the different nation groups, because there's over 150 nation groups across Australia and different regions. We have our own customs and laws. The starting point should be going in and working with community to develop, I suppose, like an evaluation framework from their perspectives.
And lastly, what would you hope that people walk away from your session today after hearing the session?
Well, just with the understanding that Indigenous peoples, particularly in the medical and the health services, haven't been treated well at all, and it's really important to, if we're moving forward as a nation and moving forward in the digital economy, to really think about Indigenous peoples as important key stakeholders when it comes to policy planning around digital data sovereignty as our nations.
Look, we as a business, we're trying to engage with New South Wales Health and those kinds of organisations. So for us, it's a really good information gathering exercise, good making great contacts, that kind of thing.
Digital health plays a massive part in innovation in healthcare and improving the customer experience, which is what we want. I was just talking to somebody from CSIRO actually about how the aged care piece was really interesting. So there's so much work that needs to be done in aged care innovation, especially around dementia and falls and just understanding the needs of how to make fewer resources go further.
Hi, I'm Dr. Annie Banbury. I'm Head of Clinical Research at CoView, the virtual engagement platform.
Hi, I'm Tracy DeAngelis. I'm an Associate Partner at Ernst & Young in Queensland.
I'm Claire Kelly. I work as a Clinical Audit Coordinator for Wide Bay Hospital and Health Service.
And so I'm keen to have a chat with the three of you a bit more about the program. So you've got the microphone, so you get to be the lucky one that speaks. So talk to me a bit more about the Women in Digital Health Leadership Program.
Yeah, so it's the first year, the inaugural year of the program run by the Australian Institute of Digital Health. It's based on an American program for women in digital health. And it's really there to help cultivate and support both existing digital health leaders and those who are emerging in digital health as it evolves. So across things like your self-awareness, how to team, how to support culture, and how to support each other in the changing world of digital health.
And so you're all in different roles and in different stages perhaps of your careers. Did you find that the cohorts that you went with were just as diverse in terms of experiences, and did that help with your experiences through the program?
I think it really helped. Certainly when I started the program, I actually felt like I shouldn't be there. There was such depth in the room from other women that I actually did start to think, how on earth did I get into this spot? But as it actually continued, it became clear that we all were there for different reasons. I think digital health is very much about diversity and the backgrounds we all come from. So I felt like I was part of my own tribe, which I think I'd been looking for a while. So certainly for me, not being in a identified leadership or hierarchical management role, understanding what leadership is versus what a manager is was quite valuable for me.
And so Annie, from your own experiences and what you've taken before the program and then going through now, what are some of the key lessons or things that you've taken from that you might think you'll be able to apply back into your day-to-day now?
Yeah, there was all different aspects of the program that I really enjoyed. There was the theory side of it in terms of leadership. But I think for me, one of the most important issues was to connect and develop a network of women in digital health. Just coming to this event today, I've caught up with so many other people that were on our leadership program. We went on a journey together. It creates bonds. We get an understanding of different organisations, both public and private. We get an understanding of different people's roles, what their problems are, how we can view it from a very strategic viewpoint, how to overcome them. And it was just been fabulous.
Yeah.
It really has.
Were there any points during the program where you're like, oh, I thought that was just me? Or, is it like, oh, it's great that there are other people that are facing the same things? Or, oh, I didn't think that would be something that someone else would experience as well?
I think that happened for everybody over and over again. And we were all really open in sharing our stories and our experiences. So you talked about different, people coming in from, different experiences in terms of their leadership experience, from those who are just starting out to those who are maybe more experienced. But that was actually the beautiful thing, because everybody has different experiences that they were able to share in the room, and that everybody learned something from it. You're never too young to learn. You're always learning. And I think that helps build everybody's confidence and builds trust as a network. So look, I think that happened over and over again.
Is there any advice or things that you might share to, say, men in leadership positions who are interested in trying to ensure they're fostering the right culture of, promoting women into leadership roles appropriately and doing things that can create a diverse? We can go to each of you about any advice you can give, so that we can start having these conversations that are more than just people who all agree in the same room about the same thing, that something needs to be done. How do we kind of get to that next step where we can bring everyone up a little bit more to do something impactful?
I think it's recognising the person, not always the gender. I do think we often focus on the gender. I believe certainly women in certain work environments do find it harder juggling family commitments, because they do tend to be often the primary carer, not always. I think certainly being aware of flexible work environments and flexible ways of working would certainly be quite useful, certainly for myself, juggling family commitments. It does get a little bit hard to be the primary care provider, but I think that's probably not just a female concern. It would benefit everyone.
It's an interesting question, and I 100% agree. It's about the person and not the gender. So I don't have children, but still my my home commitments are important as well. But so is everybody's, and I think that really understanding individuals and what they value is really key, and the diversity that is in the workplace. I think that really came through. We did a whole piece on diversity, and everybody in the room felt very passionately about that, and that it is broader than gender. What we need to understand is that, and we did learn a little bit about this in the course, and if you do the course, you'll get to experience some of that as well. But gender, there's masculine energy and there's feminine energy, and that does bring a different style of operating. And I think through culture and environment, it has made us value different things and different styles. And when you actually start to see that, and you start to understand that might be creating biases or pushing a certain way onto other people, then you really start to then stop yourself and go, okay, well, let me actually start to understand that person better and their style and the way that they need to operate, and you can start to work more harmoniously together, but also start to lift them up. And I think really the course gave all of us, I think, just extra tools in our toolkit, which let us look at things differently, but also approach things differently. I don't know if others had that experience as well.
Definitely. I think the issue for me is going back to that value proposition. Why do we want more women in leadership? Digital health is a really broad church, and we're all passionate when we work in digital health about creating technology and implementing and processing in a way that works for the whole population. And if we don't have a vast representation, a broad representation at the table, bringing their experiences to whatever it is, maybe it's tech development, whether it's around implementation, whether it's around leadership. If we don't have that broad church, then we're not really optimizing everything that we've got as a nation. And so that's what I would say. As was said, there's, we were talked about feminine and masculine energies. You can have some male leaders that have more feminine energy. Similarly, you can have more female leaders that have more masculine energy. But it's about harnessing both of those and creating an atmosphere where your teams flourish. And I think that's what I took most.
Some great takeaways there. Lastly, then, for each of you, any advice or final thoughts, things to share with perhaps women who might be coming up through their careers at whatever stage they're at, looking to have an impactful role within a leadership position or even just within a career that they're passionate about?
I would say put your application in. It certainly gave me an interesting way to reflect. It gave me a safe environment to have those reflections. Often it can feel a little bit confronting getting feedback or having a mentoring arrangement, whereas in the Women in Digital Health program, it was a safe space to share and to grow together. And I thought having that vulnerability as a collective group and that trust was certainly very valuable, and I certainly took away a lot that I will carry forward into whatever I go forward to do.
I think everybody's become so busy and there's so much stuff coming at them, from so many different angles. No one, I find, is taking time for themselves anymore. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity to actually stop and reflect, as you've said. And like we've said, it doesn't matter what stage of your career you're at. You'll either get refreshers or you'll get different perspectives from others. It's all valuable, and it's important that you actually take time out for yourself to think about where you are and who you are and what you want out of your career in digital health and as a leader and what you're bringing to others. So I think, 100% definitely invest in yourself.
Yeah, I would say, put your application in. It's for everyone at all their different stages, whatever role you do within digital health. It's about finding your tribe and really feeling belonging to somewhere.
Name is Khalid. I'm the Director of Leadership and Policy with the Institute of Digital Health.
And leadership and policy, talk to me about what's on your radar at the moment at the Institute.
So at the moment, we're working to build and refine a strategy for leadership and policy that really provides scope around what the priorities are for the Institute, what we'd like to produce policy outputs on, what we'd like to advocate to government on, and it really just assists us in prioritising what is a very long list of things that we could be working on. So the strategy is called Shifting the Dial, and we released that, I think, last month. Shifting the Dial has got 3 pillars. So the first one is changing the business models of healthcare. The second one is advancing the digital health workforce. And the third one is building trust and confidence in health and data. Under each of those pillars, we've got 3 focus areas that we would hope activity in would shift the dial towards changing the business models of healthcare and advancing, Australia's transition to a digital health future. So each of those pillars plays a very strategic role in an overarching vision that we have that is for a future where we no longer have to say digital health, it is just health,
yes.
Right?
And talk to me about those 3 pillars in particular. We've heard them come up at different points and they resonate. When you talk to me about them just then, each of those resonate with me in different ways. But how did we arrive at those 3 in particular to shift the dial?
Yeah. So we held a series of consultations amongst the constituency units of the Institute. So that's our fellows, that's our associate fellows, members, organisational members, and even experts across the sector, right? So we sat down and held workshops and consultations and spoke to members and said, if we wanted to achieve X in 15 years from now, and that is a fully digitally enabled healthcare sector, what do we need to do to shift the dial so that we can start making movement towards that goal. And business models came up quite frequently. Business models goes to, the way, on the one hand, the way that we fund and structure the health system, and on the other hand, how we deliver healthcare to patients in a manner that is patient-centric and patient-conscious or consumer-conscious. The second pillar, advancing the digital health workforce, I think really speaks for itself. We've got a very strained healthcare workforce at the moment, and digital enablement in many case studies has proven to increase efficiencies, productivity, and ease the pressure on the workforce. I think that government would be very receptive to hearing about the sorts of investments we could make in digital to ease the pressure that they have on them, right? So I think it's a target of, or not a target, modelling shows that we're going to need an additional 85,000 healthcare workers over the next 2 years. If you look at what the government's done by increasing the migration cap to ease the workforce pressures across the country by 35,000 people per year, that's across all industries. That's not just healthcare. So we're going to have to either retrain, reskill, recruit from within the country, or we're going to have to find another solution because there just physically isn't enough human beings to do the job. That's where digital comes in, and that's the case we're trying to make. And then the third one is around building trust and confidence in health and data, and that really goes to the trust that people place in the health system on the one side, and then on the other side in the data that is collected and how it's used. So that's the interoperability piece, that is the connected care piece, and that is the rights of the patients to own their own data that they are handing over to clinicians.
And so one would expect then, as a member of AIDH, that a lot of the content and the events and the activities that are happening on a day-to-day and a month-to-month within the Institute then will be kind of guided, going towards all of these principles and aligned with the strategy, right? Is that what we'd expect?
Correct, absolutely. I mean, and we're seeing that in today's summit and today and tomorrow's summit. It's really organised around those three pillars, so that a lot of the content that we're disseminating and information that we're learning really goes towards shifting the dial on digital health in Australia. Yeah. So it's not just a sort of a siloed strategy. It's really about guiding our policy, advocacy, and engagement activities. And this is obviously an engagement activity. And on the point of engagement, we've set up a complementary structure to engage professionals and experts across the sector. And there are expert advisory groups. So we've got an expert advisory group on changing the business models of healthcare. EAGs for short, on advancing the digital health workforce, and likewise for the third pillar, an expert advisory group on building trust and confidence in health and data. And the point really is to, so one of the things that we did with the EAGs was look beyond the fellowship and look beyond the membership of the AIDH and really draw on the expertise across the health, business, technology, digital sectors.
And then lastly then, say we shift the dial, say it all works and it's and it's done. Is that then when we start calling it health instead of digital health? What does that future look like, Carl?
I think so. Yes. What does the future look like? I don't know. I hope it includes a big bonus for me. No, I'm kidding. No, look, I think you're spot on. It's when digital becomes so ingrained in the enablement and the delivery of healthcare that it is just business as usual. And that's what we are working towards. And I think that is very consistent, with consumer expectations, particularly after the pandemic, where we saw the rapid, uptake and scaling of digital health technologies to enable the delivery and the accessibility of healthcare across the country. I think once you give consumers that sort of accessibility to the healthcare system, the expectation is that it stays. So I think it's vitally important that we continue our advocacy efforts in, calling for a national virtual care strategy, one that really doesn't just expect the states to coordinate amongst themselves, but actually provides leadership at a federal level and provides incentive for a federalised harmonious approach across the states, which is really integral in the data piece, the interoperability piece. If the systems aren't harmonious and don't talk to one another, there's no point in having just interoperability in one jurisdiction unless you can transfer it across the jurisdictions. So the strategy really, I think, has been in development for about 5 or 6 months now, and what we've released is very high level for a reason, but it has had a lot of thought go into it. I'm pretty pleased with where we've landed. We've got some great experts coming on board. Mary Foley is going to chair our business models group. We've got Mark Cormack, who's the former head of Health Workforce Australia, who's going to chair the workforce group. And of course, Professor Trish Williams, who is phenomenal, is going to chair the Health and Data, the Health Trust and Confidence Expert Advisory Group.
Well, I think the point that they made was that the future of health is digital. So we're in a transition phase where digital is a focus, yet we're moving towards it being one of those things that happens in health.
How do we build that capability? How do we keep everyone and make everyone interested in what digital health can and is doing at the moment?
So there's a real melting pot and a collective vibe here going on today that I haven't seen that before for a while.
My name is Dr. Ben Bravery. I'm a junior doctor here in New South Wales, studying psychiatry. But my pathway to medicine was a bit unusual. I got bowel cancer when I was 28, came out of nowhere, no family history, had all the symptoms, got really sick, had a couple of years of treatment, got spat out at the end, tried to go back to my old work, which was zoology, conservation biology, so something quite different. Yeah. Realised I had to get back into health in a big way. So I retrained as a doctor, and here I am.
Unreal. So, wow, you could write a book about that. But
I have.
And so talk to us about so you were up on stage here at the summit telling that story. Talk to me a bit more about that and how that resonated with the people here.
Yeah, so this is a digital health conference, right? The theme is trust, mistrust. I've got a lot to say on that because having been a patient first and now a medical student and then a junior doctor, I've felt key points of that journey, a lot of mistrust. Trust in my own body, trust in the health system, trust in my doctors and nurses. And then when studying, trust in my educators, that the colleagues and lecturers had my back. As a doctor, I've got some issues with trusting the system to protect me, trusting that I can give the kind of care I want to give to patients. This is a high-tech conference, but a lot of the stuff I talked about was quite low-tech, right? It's sitting at the bedside, it's connecting with people. And technology can play a role in that for sure, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit first that we've got to address.
And I find that often with, conversations about technology where it doesn't quite hit the mark. It's not so much about the technology itself, it's about the meaning that it has for patients or the impact it has and the human element and how those embrace it. So yeah, I can see how those are really important issues that would resonate with this crowd here.
Yeah, and technology of course can help the doctor-patient relationship, the nurse-patient relationship become stronger, more two-way. Definitely technology has a role to play there, but it has to be grounded in human principles, right? Kindness, compassion, respect, which sometimes in healthcare is lacking.
Yes. And talk to me more about building trust. And for those working within the healthcare space, there's a lot to become to go through the routes, become a clinician, become a doctor or a nurse or work within healthcare. A lot of it's based on getting the right grades and passing bars, and then you're out there dealing with humans. They're two quite different vehicles to drive, right? And so that's something that you've also probably come across in doing those different stages and going through as a medical, training as a doctor, and then also being a patient at the same time. Is that about right?
100%. So you've hit the nail on the head. You are taught very factual things as a doctor. It's old school, actually. It's like textbooks and anatomy and physiology and pharmacology, and all that's really, really important to the job. What's not taught so much is the kind of human stuff that you've just mentioned, because it's almost like those skills aren't valued, they're not rewarded, they're definitely not incentivized. People are selected to get into medical school on grades, and they're important, and a particular type of test, which is assessing a particular part of the brain, but they're not the full story. That would be fine if at medical school we taught all this, what they call soft skills, I call hard skills, communication, leadership, empathy, interpersonal, dynamics, but they don't. They expect, because you're a person, that you can do it. But what we know about medical training, and this goes for your time at university and then your time on the job, is those things erode as your factual knowledge grows. So I'm all about protecting that and actually rewarding that. We need to do that at the medical education level and then in the health system.
I can see that resonate with a lot of people here today, and that makes a lot of sense. That's a hard one to crack though, and actually see that change, because like you say, when you say soft skills, people will smile and go, oh yes, so that's something that we need to do, but let's get back to the real part about it. How do we actually get to a point where this is valued, this is part of the culture, and this is, we see some change in the system to actually make a more meaningful impact for patients?
So I think the first part, having thought about this quite a bit while writing the book, the first part is opening up the doors of medical school, which is a little controversial. I actually think we need people from a range of backgrounds, a range of lived experiences. They might not have the best anatomy score, but they might have grown up in an area that struggled to have a GP, for example, or their mum had diabetes, or their father died from cancer at a young age. We know that most people that go to medical school are healthy. They're from healthy families in rich postcodes with private insurance. That's not the Australian healthcare system. That's just one part of it. So I'd like to diversify who we let into med school. And then once we're in there, we need to include patients in the education. This can be low tech or high tech. The low tech solution is you just physically bring them to medical school. We don't have patients giving lectures very often. We hear from doctors about illness. We don't hear from the ill about illness. And I think that's a real oversight, because when you hear someone talk about their diabetes, or how they manage their cystic fibrosis, or how they have to save up to buy the medication to manage their asthma, you get a whole new understanding of the disease. And it's a story that you take inside, and then you can anchor the textbook knowledge, the anatomy, the physiology. And then I think once you're in the system, we've got to incentivize these kinds of skills. One way you could do that is actually empowering patients to have greater feedback. So at the moment, when you leave public hospital, you get a paper survey. You may get it, you may or may not get it. It's very old school. You go home, you tick the boxes, and then you may or may not send it in. What if we totally rethought the real-time feedback? So when I order Uber, for example, I know the bike they're on, I know who it is, I know their star rating, I know what they're carrying, I know how long it took for them to do the last order, and I know how long it's going to take to get to me. You walk into hospital, you know nothing virtually. You just wait, and no one around you seems to know. If we really empowered patients, and you could do this digitally, to create little navigator systems, or see where they are in the big picture, or even like when you Google a cafe you want to visit and Google tells you when it's busiest, you could know in your ward when the doctor normally rounds. So like they normally round between 3 and 5, or the ward's busy at this time. There's so much we could do with tech just to restore the information balance and empower patients to feed back on their system.
That's such an interesting one too. You think about from a patient's point of view, wouldn't it be convenient if you knew, even in an outpatient setting, for example, if the doctor's running behind, or would they come in? But, the old school method of healthcare is, the clinician-centric, we'll make sure the patients that they're ready for when the clinician's ready, but we're at a point now where we really need to flip that and be for when the patient's ready and respond that way too.
That's built on an old power model. I think a lot of the discussions we have now as a society outside of health is about addressing power imbalances and restoring equity. And the old idea that the clinician's time is more important than the 50 people in the waiting room, that doesn't hold anymore. Society has moved on. The paternalism and the patriarchy in medicine is going down over time, but we have to embrace that.
Firing up a lot of people here today, and really excited. I think it's so on point with where we're at right now today. Any other final thoughts or things that you would hope people who are attending this conference today, who either might have seen yours or seen other sessions today, what they might walk away with and perhaps do with that information from here?
I think the most striking thing for me is there will be lots of technology, and it has to play an important role, but it has to be built on human principles. And you've always got to remember, I know this is really simple, and for the audience I'm preaching to the converted, but the end user. How will this thing actually play out in the human space full of the emotion and the anxiety and the uncertainty and the frustration and the doctor who's hungry because they skipped lunch and the patient who's annoyed because they waited 2 hours. You can design all the lovely solutions you want, but it's the actual interface of delivery that matters. And there's lots of system fixes that we can do to improve that, to make it welcoming of tech.
Dan McInerney, I'm a partner at PwC. My passion and purpose, I would say, is healthcare. Probably got that passion from my personal experiences, in all honesty, Peter. My mum had comorbidity. I had to deal with illness, sickness, GP, specialists, hospitals. I didn't have the IQ for being a doctor, and I didn't like blood. So I did hospital administration. And then I've traversed a career from university, public sector, state, federal, and now I'm a partner at PwC. So that's a little bit about me.
Amazing, and bringing that passion front and center too. So it's great to see you here at the sessions at the AIDH and Health New South Wales Digital Health Summit. But what brings you here to this event? What's been the focus and what have you been up to the last couple of days?
Well, this has been a great event to see people, to hear and listen, learn, create new networks, listen to conversations. For me, workforce is very important. And being a consultant in a management consulting organisation, we play a role in some of the change that's occurring in the healthcare system. And so from my perspective, I wanted to, meet people, understand what was happening around the workforce agenda, and then really understand and think and learn and apply, well, what can I do from a management consulting perspective to really move and bring our industry forward as part of addressing some of the skill shortages. But importantly, how do I make sure that we can think about what do we need to do with our own people who are coming into the sector and trying to help solve problems? Yeah. So that's what I've been thinking about.
That's a good point around, from a management consulting point of view, where often it's quite, by definition, quite big picture and where the thing is heading. Some of these challenges around workforce are very practical day to day and we need some action now. How do you kind of find that balance between giving the big picture and still giving something meaningful to the healthcare workers on the front line or the hospital systems that are looking to fill gaps and the challenges that we face every day?
Great question. It's a question that we have to answer every day in terms of what we do as a business. And if I put it down to some simple things, coming from the public service into consulting, or what I want to do and what we should do as management consultants is just solve problems. And how do we practically provide capability and service to do that? But importantly, how do we contribute differently as a management consultant? So absolutely, yes, we're well known for strategy, vision, program planning. But what we realise now with the momentum this agenda has, that we have to diversify our own businesses and really provide really practical, common sense type of skills and services back into the sector. We see virtual care being such a key topic right now about how we want to, digitally enable the way in which we interact. So we have to look at our workforce and say, what do we need to adjust and how do we solve those type of problems?
And did you find that, in the sessions today, that those were the types of themes that were coming out from the speakers and the attendees?
Yeah, I'm finding, a plethora of different agendas and themes and topics that, clients and people in the healthcare sector are looking at. You're looking at solution architecture, data scientists, data engineers, because we were sitting on so much data. How do we free that up? How do we turn that into real-time insights and make immediate action around policy and protocol, but importantly, put that in the front of the consumer, the patient, so they get a real outcome straight away. So I'm very excited by the conversations that we're having here, and it's going to allow me to go back with my organisation and say, okay, are we looking at our workforce plan in the right way? And importantly, how do we provide the experiences to our staff that want to go out and do this? How do we upskill those people who might come out of universities and we put them through our normal 101 consulting courses, but how do we use something like the CHEER or other different career pathways and L&D to provide that extra oomph, if I can call it that, of being a healthcare consultant?
Yeah. I mean, we've got this, the challenging increasing in demand of healthcare, decreasing amount of clinicians that are, staying in the system. There's the pressure is on workforce. So yeah, it's the time's now to really address some of these issues. So absolutely. What any other points that excite you about the area of workforce coming from this event today?
I think what's important when we think about solutions around workforce, we have to come at a system level, but also every actor in that system. And a lot of the conversation has been most definitely and most importantly focused in around, health and hospitals, the people in the system. But there are career pathways where, we have a say or we have a right to be able to contribute and upskill. So we're seeing a lot of clinicians. They might be burning out, or they might be wanting to try another industry but still be within healthcare but not at the front line. So how do we actually help them upskill and allow them to grow and develop their own skills? So coming over to consulting as an example, we can provide them with an array of experiences, L&D opportunities, which really, build on what they've already got, which is some amazing experiences, most definitely skill sets and expertise, but give them a different lens of how to solve problems. And that's probably what I'm really excited about.
I think what has come to the forefront today was this desire from all of those partners to actually work together, which has been really interesting, just acknowledging that, there's some major problems in the system that need to be addressed, and it's going to take a group effort to come together to hopefully try and fix them, or at least come up with some solutions to move some of the way towards fixing them.
I think what I've taken so far is about the need to work together, the need to produce systems that work well with other systems and talk to each other, interoperability, but also cooperation as well, and partnerships, relationships, really important.
George Margellis, I'm currently the chair of the Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council, but been a member of HISA and AIDH for probably over 20 years now. Medical practitioner by background, actively involved in technology for probably the last 20 years, including a number of international roles with large multinationals.
Good on you. And so what brings you to the event today?
Well, I've been attending the HIC or their equivalent events now for the last 20 years, and they've always been a great opportunity to see new things, meet new people, hear new ideas. In particular today, I was presenting a workshop specifically looking at the role of technology in the aged care workforce. So, as we all know, the aged care workforce is under severe challenge. The recommendations that it's 50% undersupply at the moment, and that the attrition rate is astronomical. So what do we do to make sure people come into aged care to deliver high quality care requirement that's required by the sector? And the key, I think, is enabling them through technology, providing them with solutions that enable them to focus on their key job around providing care and automate those tasks that can be automated, and remove some of those tasks that are currently stopping them from delivering high quality care.
And so is that what a lot of the conversation today was about, particularly that workforce piece and the technology in aged care side?
So we looked at a couple of things. I mean, there's challenges both at the care delivery workforce, but we also significant challenges in the technology delivery workforce within aged care. So again, in a very competitive environment where technology skills are being asked for by multiple parts of the economy, there's a huge challenge for aged care providers to attract technology staff and keep them. So we looked at what we can do to improve that, and often that comes down to delivering a purpose as well as delivering technology. So some of the organisations, Hammond Care was a great example. They deliver a high quality dementia service across the country, and often technologists will they see that as a value add. So whilst they're delivering technology, their organisation is doing a great job delivering dementia care, and most people have someone in their family who has dementia, so they better understand that. So that from technology perspective, that's important. But then just attracting people to deliver care, because again, very competitive environment. Our hospitals are short-staffed, our primary care practices are short-staffed. How do we attract the right people into aged care? And often that comes down to enabling them to do what they want to do, what they're passionate about, which is delivering high-quality care, and removing a lot of those administrative tasks which can be automated through technology, but also facilitating that delivery of care, providing them with data around the people that they're treating to enable them to provide the right care at the right time, at the right place. And I think that's one of the key areas where mobile technologies have enabled home care services to deliver care now that previously could only be delivered in a hospital. How do we do that in people's homes?
You know, this is a topic that you've been banging on for quite a while, George, and, you know, we've seen it within health and age for a long period of time. You talked about a couple of examples of, you know, of seeing it in action. Are we starting to see some of this actually take shape, or are we still, you know, doing the should have, could have type conversation?
Look, we are starting to see more and more of it take shape, and we are starting to see the utilisation of consumer tools. Classic examples: smart TVs, you know, Google or Alexa home assistants, Wi-Fi enabled devices in people's homes that we didn't have access to 20 years ago. If we did have access to, they were expensive and they were complicated. And now, you know, you can buy online Wi-Fi enabled light bulbs so that people can, you know, automate the lights coming on in the middle of the night when they go to the bathroom, avoids them from falling over in the dark. They can turn on their kettles in the kitchen remotely, so they can, you know, monitor that to see how many times they're having a cup of tea, which gives an indicator of what they're doing. Or companies like UMPS, a local Australian company, which just measures the usage of power points in a house, gives us enough information to understand whether people's activities of daily living have increased or decreased. All those sort of easy technologies which 10 years ago were research lab technologies which required a dedicated electrical engineer, you can now buy at, you know, Harvey Norman or Officeworks. So how we utilise some of those technologies, and I think that's really one of the exciting areas where we take standard consumer technology available off the shelf and develop clinical solutions around it is a big change in the sector.
And lastly, anything that's inspired you from this event, or anything you'll be taking away from these last couple of days with all these industry peers?
Look, I think, you know, the focus on building trust. So how do we explain what we're doing in such a way that consumers, be they older people in their home or their families who play a large role, better understand that by using these technologies, yes, we may be complicating things, we may be adding some costs, but we're building a trust model where they understand that all that information builds up together to provide us with a better view of that individual and how we can help them more.
For more content and community about technology and healthcare, visit talkinghealthtech.com.